Welcome everyone, back with another video. Again, I'd like to thank Paul Kellick for this. This is a hoodie. It's a nice hoodie, man. It's got Venatores on it. He'll have stuff for. Just hit him up on Facebook. I hope you don't mind, Paul. But it's very nice. This video, of course, first a disclaimer, especially with this one, because I'm going to get into some graphic stuff. Again, I'm always talking about the past, and it's always information, kind of how my mind worked, when dealing with the dogs, how I raised them, what I did with them, It's an insight into one person's mentality and type of dogs. And I'm going to cover specific traits. That's what this video is going to be called. Now, in other videos and posts and stuff, you see people commenting on what they liked about the dogs, and even comments about famous dogs they've seen or just regular dogs they've seen, at shows, in competition, And people will mention, they like stifle dogs or head dogs or chest dogs. They like stuff like, speed, power. I say that all the time. Things like ability and, intelligence, stuff like that. All valid, all true. With me, when I've mentioned, performance traits, I'll say things like I like dogs that scratch hard, didn't hesitate in the corner, took hold, didn't turn, things like that. A little bit more specific, more valid. But there's certain things I like my dogs to do, and I tried to key on the ones that did that. And a lot of that has to do with the upbringing from pup till grown adults. You try and influence them or teach them or just, looking at what they're doing and see how they react, see how they act and react. One of the things I mentioned before is, I used to, if you want to say, teach them how to scratch or introducing them into scratching, and I would, one of the ways I did it is I had my son stand, first a short distance, and then I would increase the distance. He'd hold a rag or a piece of hide, and I'd hold my dog and just scratch him to the hide, And it was important for my son to hold the bait, as it were, level with the dog's head or even a little lower, but not up high. And when you do that, people have a tendency to, because the dog's coming hard, they have a tendency to let go and lift their hand, or lift their hand up and let go. So he had to time it to where when the dog got there, at that instant, that's when he would let go, and the dog would get that bait. Then it would move from that to doing it in a box. Now, dogs, if they're coming 100 miles an hour, so he would be basically at the scratch line with the hide or the bait. And sometimes the dogs, they're coming 100 miles an hour, they'll bang theirself or hit theirself, or at the last second turn away into the corner or the side. So the dog what he had to do was focus on that bait and follow that bait and snatch that bait or hit that bait without overstepping it and hitting the wall behind him, the corner behind him. Once I got him to do that, and the point of that was, if you look at it this way, I wanted my dogs to aim their shot. I wanted them to focus from the time I set them down, when I got them between my legs and I'm holding them, to focus on where they're going to hit. Not only that, I wanted them to start right now. No hesitation. No fussing, no looking around, no nothing. And when you're working with dogs like that, they learn to stay focused on what they're doing, and they can still hear you, they can still smell you, they can still see you if they glance over. They know where you're at. So you're in there working together with them. They don't have to take their focus off what's in front of them. But I really wanted them to aim their shot. A lot of them mine would hit the left shoulder first, or the chest, or the throat, brisket, something like that. But I wanted them, and again, like I mentioned before, those spots, inherently, the dog knows that those are where the opponent lives. That's where he wants to do the damage. Heart's on the left side, so a lot of them would hit that left side. Doesn't mean they would hit other spots. Doesn't mean that they would change holds. They did. But I'm looking at them to go under certain circumstances, especially in the beginning, to go and hit a spot that's going to do damage. And the chest, brisket, that's where the heart is, all that. If they go into the back end, belly, stifle, like that, that old instinct from wild animals hunting, going to the back end, I think that's where it comes from. But regardless of what they did, I don't care if it was an ear, a face, a head, muzzle, nose, leg, foot, whatever. They're aiming their shot. And there's nothing the other opponent can do to stop them from doing that, because they're coming so fast and so hard, the other dog has to react, or they're going to meet up somewhere in the middle or 3/4 of the way, whatever it is, on the first release, and they're going to figure that out. They're either going to get their hold, or the other dog's going to get their hold. Then they have to counter that. So that was the reason for doing that, because I think it's so important for an opponent, any opponent, even in boxing or MMA, to draw first blood, as it were, to get in there and start going to work, regardless of what the opponent is doing, regardless of what is happening. They're going to control the pace. My dogs are going to control the pace, and my dogs are going to dominate. That's the hope, that's the wish, that's the training. That happened most of the time. So that was very important to me. Along with that, I want them to be cognizant. Again, they have to keep focused, but be cognizant of their surroundings. Where they are in the box, how they move. I didn't like them off their feet too much. I like them to remain on their feet. Hopefully they didn't get thrown around too much. If they did, then since strength was and power was a big deal with me, if my dogs got thrown around a lot, especially in the beginning, I did something wrong. That shouldn't happen. And most of the time it didn't happen. That's how important it was. I want them to be planted on their feet. Sometimes they'll raise up on their back legs. That shouldn't take too long for them to do what they want to do. Sometimes if you got a smart dog, they grab them by the head, the ear, the muzzle. They have to be able to counter that. A lot of it is just overpowering the dog. A lot of it is twisting their head to the side and shooting for the throat. Sometimes they swap it out. And if they're swapping it out like that, I preferred mine to shake. If they're not the bone-crushing type where they just sever stuff or crush stuff, where they're doing the damage, I like them to shake, because that produces more damage. And in a case like Clayton Blood, who was a head dog, if he got on a dog's muzzle, he wasn't a hard biter at all, not in the least. But what would happen is, with the dog shaking itself or pulling itself out or trying to maneuver around, twist and turn, as long as he was holding on, the opponent would damage itself. And that happened on more than one occasion. So even though he wasn't a hard-mouthed dog, and if he got on the head or the ear, he didn't even break skin. But if he got on that muzzle or the bottom jaw, in the wherewithal of the dog trying to get out of it or trying to maneuver, pull out, or whatever it was, they would damage their self. So maybe he knew that, and that's why he did the way he did. but it was effective. It worked. And it worked for him. And one of the things I like my dogs to have good finish. A lot of them will finish in the throat. Even Bill, who was basically a chest and shoulder fighter, when he got him down, that's where he would go, in the throat. Clayton Blood, being a head dog, who really didn't fight rough, he might take a leg every now and again or something like that, but he'd always inevitably go back to the top. When he got him down, he would go into the throat too. That's an instinct, a finishing instinct that dogs have of putting the opponent away. Like boys used to write to me in letters and say they were permanently retired. That's was his way of saying it in the letters that he would send me. And I thought it was pretty a unique way of saying it. If you permanently retire an opponent, they're not going to compete anymore. So that was those are things that I tried to keep in all my dogs, and definitely the ones that I bred had to be game. They had to have finish, and they had to be strong and fast. Now within that, you're not always going to have it your way. So when things weren't going their way, I would pay attention to how my dog reacted. If they panicked, I didn't like that. If they got frustrated, not so much, If they got pissed off, that was better. If they figured it out quickly, that's the best. Figuring it out might mean a counter to the throat, like I said. It might just mean overpowering their opponent, pushing their way through it, and knocking them off balance. And then when they knocked them off balance, what are they going to do? Which holds are they going to go to? If they're grabbing a leg and shaking it, that's good, but I prefer a more damaging area, If they're grabbing skin holds, and sometimes dogs will grab skin holds at first, or they won't, it doesn't seem like they're biting hard at first. And that could be for a number of reasons. It could be they can't bite hard anyways. It could be the opponent doesn't let them get a better hold, and all they can get is skin. And it could be because they're waiting for the right position, the right moment. And it could be where the dog is slowing down. Now they can get their mouth on them better. And then they will sink them in. They will take that deep hold. So a lot of it is maneuvering around. A lot of it is the dog's own intelligence. People think that rough, hard-biting dogs and bulldozer type and power type dogs, they ain't smart. They are. And you'll see this, or I saw this as the dogs were growing up. What's going through their head? What's going through their mind? What are they seeing? What are they looking at? How are they reacting to it? All of that matters. So even though it may be something that you don't particularly like at the time, I would think about it later and try and understand, well, why is the dog doing that? And what would make sense to me is, well, he didn't bite hard when he had that leg hold, right? But he was just using that to control the dog till he could switch it to a throat hold or a chest hold. That's when he bit harder. So that told me the dog had the intelligence enough to know that, okay, maybe he could break a leg. And some of my dogs did do that too, just from the shaking aspect, usually crack them, But that wasn't his intent. His intent was to finish. And to do that, he had to get the right hold. But it had to be at the right time. If he's not bowling them over and they're swapping it out and it's even, or even if my dog is a little bit behind, that's not the time to waste that energy on a part of the body that isn't going to do that much damage, especially if my dog wasn't a hard biter. So they waited till the opportunity arose, and then they'd shoot in real quick, and they were fast. Most of them had a fast mouth too. People that are familiar with that term know what that means. And it's just being able to get that hole, move real quick and get that hole. Some will grab the hold and it's not that good, and they'll push forward, bite into it, while the other one is either trying to get away or they're swapping it out. I like them to control the individual too, which means because of their strength, they were able to do what they wanted to do better than the opponent could do it. Even if they're swapping it out, it would mean that something to the effect of my dog was shaking the other dog off balance more than he could shake my dog off balance. My dog could push forward and push the other dog around more than he was doing it to my dog. Or he could put him into a corner, maneuver him to the side of the wall if he had him by the head, or if he had him by the shoulder or the chest, and he could use that wall to his advantage, meaning they would bang the opponent up against it, or push them into the corner where they're at a disadvantage, or even slam their body down, just trying to discombobulate them. They get a feeling when their opponent isn't in control. So if you bang something down, you feel them getting weaker because they have to react. It knocks the air out of them. When you bang their head on the side, it discombobulates them. They let up a little bit. Now, my dog knows he's in control, and he can take advantage of that. So until the opponent does something about it, he's going to keep doing it. Sometimes they're bowled up in a corner, or they laid out in a corner, and they can't get the hold that they want. So what they'll do is they'll pull them out of the corner, and then bam, go to the hold they want. So these are some of the specific traits that I looked at, not just the normal things like people talk about, which I do too. About scratching hard and being fast and strong and all that. Like I said, all that stuff is good, but through years of observation and experience and schooling my dogs and raising them and all that, I wanted to see certain things out of them that were common among them, because I knew in the breeding program, if they have these common traits, they're gonna pass those common traits on too. So, and the only way to do that is to see them do that, or introduce them to the situation, or actually, like we mentioned before, myself and Bakri, placing them in that situation, placing them in that hold. I might have had to do it repeatedly, and until they got it in their head, hey, what is he trying to do? Sometimes they won't. You could stick them right in a stifle, and they won't take it, or they'll take the hold because you're forcing them to, and they'll come out of it and go to another hold that they want. But if you repeat that over and over again, they'll understand that, hey, my buddy over here wants me in that hold. Once they receive the results of how the opponent reacts, because they get that hold, the soft area like the stifle or the groin or the belly, it's going to encourage them to do it more. And I didn't have a lot of stifle fighters. Big Red was a stifle fighter. Shoulder and stifles, that's basically where he would go. If he was on his back, he'd grab the bottom jaw or shoot for the brisket. But inevitably, every time he started, he went to the left shoulder. Bill did the same thing. Mr. Rowdy did the same thing. Miss Rowdy did the same thing. She would even hit a dog real high up on the shoulder, almost by the neck. And that cut off the circulation. When I saw that and how the opponent react to it, it kind of panics them and kind of weakens them, I thought, hey, that's a pretty good hold. She would throw that, she threw that in her son. Howler, he would do the same thing, get up high here. He was rough too. Good biter, good mouth. Good fighter, real rugged, durable. That's part of it too. The durability, what kind of punishment they can take. I have very, very few dogs that would cry from pain or make any kind of a sound from pain. The way I could tell that it affected them is they got more intense, more angry, up the pace a little bit, got mad basically, which I liked. You know, again, those are the types of individuals that I bred. You know, if I thought they were worthy of it, the ones that had the traits that I'm speaking about. But I really liked them to aim their shot. You know, drawing first blood doesn't mean you're going to win. Doesn't mean you're going to put them away early. Doesn't mean the opponent can't outlast you or counter that. But I liked it. It's effective. You know, you get the first shot off. At least in that sense, you're a little bit ahead, and then it'll play out. And being able to understand the area, the box that they're in, and how to maneuver themselves, whether it's on offense or defense, and how to maneuver the opponent around within that area was important too. That's why I did a lot of stuff in the box. You know, play tug of war with them, scratch them in there. I wanted them to become very familiar with that type of area, because that's where, you know, I got to the point where I really didn't roll my dogs, you know, out in the yard or on the chain or anything like that. You know, I had my box set up a lot of the time for most of the day or days or weeks like that. You know, I took it down sometimes, you know, especially during the summer, but it was up all the time, and the dogs were familiar with it, and they could see it. They knew what happened in there. They knew if I took them in there, something was going to go down, whether it was playtime with the rag or scratching them with my son or tug of war or whatever, or I brought something in for them to school against, you know. And it got to the point where anytime they saw that, they knew what was up. Again, that kind of stuff was important to me. So these are some of the specific traits and kind of how my mind worked. And as always, thanks for pressing the like button. Thanks for watching the vid. Thanks for subscribing. And thanks for your support.